Sorry for the delay, everybody. All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Medfield Board of Selectmen meeting for Tuesday, November 2nd, 2021. We are called to order, and this meeting is being video recorded. And we will start by taking a moment of appreciation for our troops serving around the globe in defense of our country. Thank you. Our first appointment, I invite Police Chief Michelle Garrett forward to have the awarding of the life-saving medal. Thank you, Chief. And I would ask the following individuals to come forward, please. First, Sue Harmon, representing Captain Michael Harmon, Firefighter Matt Reineman, William DeKing, Connor Ash, Wayne Solali, William Bento, and William Carrico. I think, Chief, we want him over there?
Yes, why don't you guys stand along the side wall over there, please? First of all, thank you for having me tonight. I do want to point out where would you like me?
Medfield TV will hand you the microphone.
Oh, perfect. I feel like a rock star now. Thank you all. I just want to point out it is so hot in here, I may actually need rescue to save me by the end of this, so just stand by. We are here tonight because of the superior actions of some of our members. I'm not going to lie, I'm very hot right now. Goodness. I submitted a letter to the Board of Selectmen back on May 20th, 2021 regarding the actions of some of our police officers and firefighters that I believed deserve recognition. I would like to read that letter in at this time.
Please do.
To the Honorable Board of Selectmen, on May 18th, 2021, Medfield Police and Fire personnel responded to South Street at Wilson for a report of a motor vehicle collision, automobile versus motorcycle. Officers Bento and Solali arrived on scene and observed a catastrophic accident which resulted in serious bodily injury to the operator of the motorcycle. It was immediately apparent that the operator had suffered life-threatening injuries. Officer Bento assisted Samaritans by taking over C-spine and securing the victim on the ground, as the nature of his head injury made him highly combative. Officer Solali assisted Medfield fire personnel, Captain Michael Harmon, firefighter Matt Reineman, and firefighter William DeKing, in placing a tourniquet on the victim's leg to stop him from bleeding out. Officer Solali later drove the rescue to the landing zone for a med flight to Tufts Hospital, where fire personnel, including Fire Chief William Carrico, performed additional life-saving measures. Sergeant Connor Ash, assisted by Officers Bento and Solali, secured the scene and conducted an accident investigation along with the Massachusetts State Police Recon Team. And remember, this letter is dated from May. Yesterday, I learned that the victim survived the accident and is recovering in the hospital. Additionally, members of the family informed us that according to hospital staff, the measures taken initially on scene are believed to have saved the victim's life. I bring this incident to your attention as the coordinated efforts of the Medfield police and fire personnel represent the highest level of performance under extremely dire circumstances. Today, due to the heroic actions of our combined staff, the family is supporting a loved one through his convalescence and not, tragically, planning a funeral. While it is our sworn duty to protect and assist all in need, the ability for our law enforcement personnel to shift into life-saving medical action exceeds my performance expectations. I believe the actions of those members on scene are deserving of recognition, and I respectfully request the board to consider awarding the following members with a life-saving medal for their superior performance. Fire Chief William Carrico, who I will note is uncomfortable by this award because it is not typically issued to a chief. However, he was directly involved in the saving of this human's life. Captain Michael Harmon, posthumously, which will be accepted by his wife, Sue. Firefighter Matt Reineman. Firefighter William DeKing. Sergeant Connor Ash, Officer Wayne Salali, and Officer William Bento.
Thank you very much, Chief. We need a motion to award the medals.
I have a motion to award the life-saving medal to the following individuals.
Would you like to make a motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
All right.
At this point in time, I don't know if you'd like to have any comments before presenting them with their awards.
Yeah, sure. I will, well, if you guys are going to speak, I'll go last. You can go ahead.
Well, gee, I was going to endorse what Mike had said. I think all of us hope in our lives we'll do good. There's only some of us that have a chance to clearly do something that is unmitigatingly good. When I've thought of public safety officers over the course of my life and have heard stories about public safety officers, I think there are very few professions where people are tested so acutely with so little warning. And the fact that you all were tested, that you all came through in such a actually stunning way, I guess, given the circumstances, including one who's not here, I only can give you my total admiration.
It's a very impressive thing that you all did, and so on behalf of your town, I just want to thank you. All that training that you guys go through all the time allows you to get into a mode of doing what needs to be done when the crisis is there. So everybody succeeded really well, so thank you all.
And so finally, I'll say, there's a way in which this ceremony honors actions in what was something of a random event and a reminder of the effect that chance can have in our lives. We're here to honor you for all the work that you did in saving a life, but we are, of course, under a shadow, given that Captain Harmon is not here with us in person. And that is a reminder of the unfairness of life. It is unfair that he is not here and not still with his family. And it was in some ways random that the man whose life you saved intersected with yours on that day earlier this year. That he was there in that moment in Medfield, as opposed to someplace else, carried with it an element of chance. But that you all were there was a matter of choice. The choices you made to enter your professions as police officers, firefighters, paramedics, EMTs, professions of service that carry with them the expectation that on any given day you may be called upon to put yourselves at risk in the service of others. And you did put yourselves at risk to save the life of a stranger simply because he happened to be in grave need on a street in Medfield, Massachusetts. And our town and our society depend on people like you choosing careers and lives that put yourselves at risk in the service of others. We all count on your being there, and we should not take that or you for granted. So while in a direct way, we are honoring what you all did that day, we are also honoring the choice you made to enter your professions, honoring the effort you put in to develop the skills you put to use in saving a life, honoring those who trained you and helped you to develop those skills, honoring those who instilled in you the virtue of courage to enter into a dangerous and risky situation to carry out your duties. And hopefully in doing so, we help inspire others to follow in your footsteps and consider professions of service. On behalf of the town, I add my congratulations to you on this great honor. We are proud of you and grateful to you for your service to the town. Thank you. Right.
Before dismissing the officers and with the fire chief's permission, his personnel, I would just like to say that this is a very unique circumstance. We actually had a run from a member who is in the pinnacle of his career to our most junior officer who had 6 months of experience at the time of this accident. So when you look at the different ranks and experience standing before you, it's just a testament to how our organizations truly work together to be successful in our profession. So I just wanted to make a note of that. And with a request, if we could just take a picture for the patch. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. My officers, and with the chief's permission, are dismissed. Prior to moving on to the second agenda item, I did want to note, I've asked the officers to dress a little more casually tonight. One of the few things that drives me crazy is an unshaven policeman, having my father been in the military for so many years, but we are participating in Home Base No Shave November, which supports veterans. So I'm going to eat this.
Came to our first meeting of the month.
They're pressuring me to double down for December. So it's a cause near and dear to my heart, and I'm just going to suffer through the next 2 months staring at beards. Although I'm glad to see some of them are coming in gray, and I don't feel like quite the old lady anymore. May I move on to the second
Yes,
agenda
Chief.
item? Thank you. Second and last for me is just a request to the Board of Selectmen to appoint Student Officer Daniel Neal to the Medfield Police Department. We were fortunate enough to get Dan into the Randolph Academy, which started yesterday, as opposed to having to wait until the December Academy, so we were very pleased with that. I expect his performance will be superior as a military guy and just a very fine young man.
Terrific. And when can we expect that he'll be done?
He will graduate approximately 6 months. It's a little over 800 hours of training. That training will leave him certified as a police officer under the new Reform Act, and then he will have about 2 to 3 months of field training. So it takes roughly 9 months to get boots to ground.
So Chief, the reference here to student officer is just a student at the academy?
Yes, so we do appoint them as police officer status, but he won't have any police powers until he's certified by the academy.
Okay, thank you.
Is that how we've done it in the past?
Yes, it is.
For some reason, student officer seemed like a different term than.
They probably called it probationary officer at the time.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. That's
Yeah.
just a new term for the same thing.
Yes, simply because his probation won't technically start until he starts work with us, and then it's a year after that.
Okay.
Motion.
Yep. I move that we appoint Daniel Neal to the position of student officer for the Medfield Police Department.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye. Opposed?
Thank you, gentlemen, unless you have
Thank you.
anything for me?
Thank you, Chief.
All right.
All right. Next item is Fire Chief William Carrico.
So the chief is going to leave with everybody else, and I will speak on his behalf.
Okay, this
This is just to authorize the ambulance medication exchange agreement. We have this in existing, it's just a renewal of the agreement.
Okay. Any questions on the agreement, Pete?
I was just surprised that we go that far and that we exchange
Yes.
that far away, but that's fine with me.
I believe we have 3 or 4 different exchange agreements.
I would observe this one only requires the chair's signature.
Correct.
Ready? Okay. I move that we authorize the chair to sign an ambulance service medication exchange agreement with Steward Good Samaritan Medical Center, Inc.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Thank you very much, Christine. All right, now, Medfield State Hospital Development Committee to discuss the Medfield State Hospital proposals, evaluations, and the Development Committee's recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. Welcome, Chair Todd Trebinko.
Are we using this mic now, or it's...
I think that mic is not working, so they can give you the traveling mic.
Okay.
It's working now? Excellent.
It's just for home.
Just for home.
You won't get amplification. It's so people home.
For sound, okay. Will you be able to hear me okay?
I hear you just fine.
So thank you. On behalf of the Development Committee, we appreciate you having us back for the second time in as many weeks. Our evaluation of the RFP responses has been completed using a process we discussed at some length the last meeting. That process took a little more than 8 weeks and followed the requirements of 30B for disposition of municipally owned property by publishing an RFP, which was vetted by the community and by the Selectmen through multiple rounds of comment, and which stipulated the competitive selection criteria for proposal evaluation. So as I mentioned at the last Board of Selectmen's meeting, one developer consistently scored materially higher than the other in accordance with the criteria that were published in the RFP, and that developer was Trinity Financial. That was a unanimous judgment reached by the Development Committee, and the preponderance of public comments received, as well as 100% of the reviews from Medfield stakeholder groups that we involved throughout the process also favored Trinity Financial over Pulte Homes. So as a committee, we did meet again on October 29th, subsequent to the last Board of Selectmen meeting, to further discuss the process and to clarify our recommendations for the Selectmen. We determined that it's best to defer best and final offers from the developers until later in the process, when we believe it will be more valuable to the process and to the Medfield community. And that's permissible according to our legal counsel. However, in order to take this step, we must designate one proposal as the most advantageous, received pursuant to the terms of the RFP. We may designate another proposal as a backup proposal, but we have to select one as the most advantageous. So the Development Committee in our meeting, we voted to recommend to you, the Board of Selectmen, that Trinity Financial be selected as the submitter of the most advantageous proposal under the terms of the RFP, and that Pulte Homes be designated as a backup proposal. If we are able to move forward with Trinity, the next step pursuant to the RFP would be to enter into a provisional designation agreement, which is referred to as a PDA in the request for proposals, and that would be with Trinity Financial and only Trinity Financial, and open a 120-day due diligence period whereby Trinity would be given access to the site and to the buildings for testing, and as the most advantageous proposer would be able to roll up their sleeves with their financing sources, the Development Committee, other town representatives to prove out their proposal as it may be modified as a result of the due diligence findings. That 120-day period also gives the Development Committee and the Selectmen, other town departments and committees additional time to analyze the Trinity proposal to make sure their concerns are addressed and that Trinity's initial proposal is improved as necessary before any more definitive agreement would be reached. We then also voted to recommend to the Selectmen that the Selectmen authorize moving forward with a provisional designation agreement with Trinity, which the Development Committee would work on with our special counsel, Mead, Towerman, and Costa, which is supported by Mr. Sorrell here, on the terms and conditions of the document would be negotiated with Trinity as necessary to reach an agreement with terms and conditions acceptable to the town and to Trinity. We would then start 120 days of additional due diligence, which would create time to further analyze cost and benefits of the RFP responses in accordance with Selectman Marcucci's suggestion at the last meeting. And during this time, the Development Committee would also obtain direct input from the National Park Service and Mass Historic through our historic consultant as to whether any demolition, such as that which characterizes the Pulte Homes proposal, could be carried out on the campus without jeopardizing the availability of federal and state historic credits on the core campus or the proposed Cultural Arts Center. So in summary, we made two recommendations. We voted two recommendations for the Selectmen, one being to designate Trinity Financial as the most advantageous proposal received in response to the RFP, and the second for the Selectmen to authorize the Development Committee and its council to negotiate a PDA with Trinity Financial on terms and conditions acceptable to the town, the Selectmen, and to Trinity.
Thank you. Pete, questions, comments?
Well, the process is just moving along, so I think it makes sense to do what they've asked.
I assume you don't have any questions.
Yeah, I don't have.
So I have a couple of questions. One is, how extensive an agreement is this PDA? I mean, is this going to be a 6-month negotiation, or what are we?
I wouldn't think so. I mean, I would imagine it would take a few weeks. The state actually has a form which we looked at when we drafted the RFP. I don't know that we would necessarily use that form.
Yeah.
But think of it when you're buying a home, you go from the initial $1,000 offer to a purchase and sale with some terms and conditions.
And I think, and then what would happen, kind of in your view, at the end of this 4-month period? Like what would the next decision point be? What would we be deciding at that point? Like what would the?
Well, I think to some extent it depends on what happens during those 120 days. But best case scenario would be that Trinity would prove out its assumptions in its proposal and respond to some of the comments and critiques of the proposal that they've received from the town, and move with the town to a more definitive proposed agreement that could then be brought to a town meeting for presentation to the public.
So I mean, is it? Because I think I had raised sort of the last time, sort of the point at which we're going to kind of weigh the full picture of both proposals, and kind of where I had come out at the end of the last meeting was that we were not really at that point yet. That
Correct.
We don't have enough information from Trinity, and I have no quarrel with the assessment that you all have made as it being the more advantageous proposal. But I do think at some point you've got to kind of weigh the full picture, right?
Agreed.
And I think, and at some point we do have to make a judgment, not just between the two, but between the two and none, right? We have to decide when the project is proved up, right? Is this worth doing, depending on whatever it looks like at that point, right? I think that's going to be a decision point before we go ahead. Because at least in my mind, I think we still should be in the evaluation stage of both of these, because we don't know what it's going to look like at the end. And so
I think it's fair to say that it would be a continued evaluation even during the period. They'll be looking at they'll be getting into the buildings, they'll be doing their studies, they'll be talking to their financing sources, but we'll also be drilling down on their proposals and the changes that we'd indicated we would like to see.
Mm-hmm.
So, as I said at the last meeting, it was very clear at the special town meeting regarding the zoning that the bar is very high for a proposal to be presented to the town, or a disposition vote to be presented to the town. And we understand as a committee, all of those questions need to be answered so that people can make an informed vote.
right, okay. But I mean, I think I'm correct, though, that kind of, because I don't think we're in a position to do it now. I don't think we're in a position to do it now to have a debate on the two proposals, or the two proposals versus none, right? Because I don't think we have enough information, right? So I don't think it would be very useful to have that kind of discussion at this point. So I think it's the right thing to go ahead for this 4-month period to figure out what it is, but I think that at some point, we're going to have to sit down, compare the financials of both, compare the ramifications of both from a municipal standpoint. What does it mean? What does it look like? And so at least we understand, if we're continuing down the road with Trinity, we understand sort of what we're giving up in the process. And that's fine, but we just have to understand what those trade-offs are and what the facts are. And I don't think we have them now, right? It's not
Correct.
It's too early or too soon to know.
Right, and it would be
Yeah.
a typical, real estate acquisition or portfolio acquisition type process. There's an initial offer made with a lot of assumptions and conditions. It then goes to a period of due diligence where those conditions either get addressed, or one party might propose changes, and you don't know that you have, what you would consider to be an executable offer until you are on the other side of due diligence.
Right.
And I think that, in many ways, I think what you're referring to is that that's equally true for the town. That's not just true for Trinity to decide if these buildings can be salvaged and which ones may be in better condition than others, or what's going on with the environmental. It's also for the town to understand traffic, school counts, impact on the community in general.
Mark?
This is a process, there is some flexibility, but it is a process. And I would not be surprised, although I have not been directly involved in this, I did talk with Todd yesterday, but I wouldn't be surprised with respect to this provisional agreement to get some requests from Trinity of assurances on the part of the town in return for the fact that they're presumably going to expend significant time and resources now during the due diligence period. So I would think that they're in a preferred position and you're moving forward on that basis. And I would think you probably need to be involved at least to review that agreement while it's being negotiated.
But those asks would be in the agreement. I mean, the things they're looking for would be things they would put into the agreement.
I would
totally
expect,
understand
yeah.
that point, that if they're going to invest time in this, they have some expectation of what's going to happen on the other
Right.
side of it.
Let me comment. I'm trying to be sure I understand the direction you're coming with your comments, Mike. The only thing I think it would be a mistake is to think that we just have still an even up competition between two competitors here. It's not like we haven't done anything. We put a RFP out there, described a certain scope of work, established a set of criteria, got some proposals in, evaluated those proposals, and they were evaluated at the level that these proposals are, which is sort of it's not a pre-proposal, but it's kind of like a concept that you kind of buy into first, and then through this next stage, the proposer that we elected to be the preferred developer is now going to do a lot of on-the-ground work to make sure that what they represented they could do in this early stage conceptual proposal, they can make whatever adjustments they might need to make. At the other end of that, we then don't have a head-to-head competition. I think the challenge here would be if, and this isn't a given, if the proposal came in that we thought was, if the development committee thought the proposal that was submitted was advantageous to the town, that would be the concept that would then inform the taxpayers when they're asked to basically approve the disposition agreement. If either A, we didn't get a good, if we didn't get a proposal we thought was advantageous to the town because it sort of went off the rails, or even if we thought it was what was on the rails, but the town, in a town meeting, voted it down. I think that was the reason we didn't reject either proposal, because it's like at the point that Plan A isn't going to work, even though it seemed like it was consistent, we would need to think about what do we do next, and we didn't want to preclude the alternative. I think for some of the reasons that you're interested in having us not do that. Independent of that, the point that we discussed at the last meeting, where it would be important to flesh out what that alternative proposal means, at least in economic terms, so that when people do make a vote, they're informed about what
We
they've
have to
chosen.
flesh them both out.
Yeah,
We're going to flesh
yeah,
them both
yeah.
out from that standpoint.
But
Mark, you're gonna-
it's not like it's
Just,
start again.
just by way of completeness, because it's a very confusing concept in the big picture to begin with, and you're proceeding forward, and so it's fair that you understand the town meeting vote that's required for disposition is a 2/3 vote. You could take a blanket vote to give disposition, and then it's only a majority, or the town meeting could delegate. Or you could combine the two into one, which seems to be the way this is trending. So maybe it doesn't make it's not important to distinguish, but technically, the 2/3 quantum is only on a disposition, it's a change of use. The actual agreement, if it were separate, would only require a majority vote.
Oh, okay.
Right. We have a question in the Q&A from Christine Connolly. It's timely, so I'll ask you. She writes, "At this point in the process, we haven't made the decision that we will definitely sell the property, correct? Doing nothing is still an option, I believe. Is that correct?" And the answer to that is yes. We haven't made any final decision. We are advancing one proposal into further due diligence, but that both, whether either of these proposals is submitted to a town meeting, then what the town meeting does is down the road. Right. And you could get to the end of the process, the development committee could conclude this is just not
Correct.
work.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely.
And that would probably be the end of that portion of the process. Yeah.
The other piece is that the residents will vote on the disposition, but I think we're committed to having the resident, so they're not voting on the contract, or they're not actually approving a contract, they're voting on the disposition. But the point is to make sure they know what would happen if they approved the disposition. They would know where we're going
Well,
with
can
that.
we word it
so.
very narrowly or very broadly, and
Yeah.
as we've done in both ways in the past?
I think it would likely be relatively narrow, I would
Yeah.
think, so that it's cabined to what's being proposed. So, all right, I appreciate this, and I think this is the right way to go.
So one of the things that I would hope that we might be able to test at some point is whether or not the successful developer might be willing to consider entering into some sort of partnership with the town in terms of sharing some of their profits. So that, I mean, for instance, Trinity said that they were expecting, I think, $5 million a year to be generated by this development for them. I would love to ask them if they would be willing to consider on a long-term partnership basis with the town of sharing some of the profits. For me, that would help to alleviate my concerns over whether we were getting the right price. And the more that we can move, in my mind, from the sale price into the long-term payouts over the years, the better off we are because of our obligation to share half of our proceeds with the state.
So the 5 million, that might be the gross rental. I'm not sure exactly what the 5 million is, but we could certainly.
I just remember that as what they said was their expected return once they had the project up and running. Annual return.
Other thoughts, Pete?
No, that was,
So, just to, oh, go ahead.
Well, just the process, I think there's two votes. One is to accept the recommendation of the Development Committee on proceeding with Trinity, and then I think the second one was to authorize the committee to proceed with the PDA. So whenever you're ready, that's...
I'm ready, unless anyone
I'm
has
ready.
a further comment, so. Well, question from Mike.
Just curious.
Do you want a microphone and identify yourself and where you live?
Hi, Mike Quinlan, 1 Stewart Street. Just question, this PDA, are there any financial implications to the town? Is the town committing to anything financially other than just allowing access to the site for the preferred developer?
We don't anticipate that there's any cost to the town.
Thank you.
I guess some legal fees perhaps to be Tellerman. Not to you. You said you weren't going to do it. You said they should do it.
I don't charge, I'm on a straight retainer, it doesn't, I'm revenue neutral.
Yes. If you also could get a microphone and identify yourself, please, sir.
I will.
Thank you.
Contrary to my past. I just wanted to remind everybody also is that the pro forma that was submitted was pretty rudimentary, and that one of the things that we hope that the committee will get out of this will be drilling down into what the actual costs are, what the benefits are. So, in fact, Trinity's proposal, they stated that because of the nature of the RFP and the quasi privacy of the not interfacing with all of the appropriate town departments and everything else, and privacy is not the right word, but they were discouraged from sitting down and having discussions, detailed discussions with the departments. I mean, it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that during due diligence. And I also think they're going to probably find some surprises environmentally, although we did give them everything we possibly had. It will be interesting. And obviously, I'm in support of going forward. I'd like to see the due diligence get done. I'd like to see some real numbers so that we can assess them and compare them to what the financial model said, because there were some significant differences between the financial returns in the model, that the committee did, the prior committee did, and the new committee. So I'm looking forward to see what happens.
Thank you. Gus, do you want to make a motion?
Sure. I move that we accept the recommendation of the MSH Development Committee to designate Trinity as the preferred developer.
and Pulte is the backup.
Most advantageous is the
Most
key
advantageous
phrase.
developer, and I guess, quite sure how to word that without rejecting Pulte as a backup.
We would like to designate Pulte Homes as the backup.
Is it?
As a
Okay.
backup
And
proposal.
further designate Pulte Homes as a backup development.
Second.
All in favor?
Yep.
Aye. Opposed? And then a motion to
Second,
authorize.
I move that we authorize the Medfield State Hospital Development Committee to proceed with negotiating a PDA with Trinity.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Great.
And then I have a question for Mark. If now that we have identified or designated Trinity as the most advantageous developer, are we now able to allow our other two meeting members or committee members who basically had recused themselves up to this point to rejoin us? It's Pat Casey. Speaking to, Bill brought up the issue of the models and things like that. We have Pat Casey as one.
It's an ethics issue. They have to raise the question.
They'll have to
But
go
I don't,
through.
frankly, I don't,
Okay.
we played this out. I think it goes further. Chronologically, I think it goes out further.
Okay.
Because you haven't got a final agreement or the terms of the agreement or whatever.
I see. Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Todd, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen.
All right. The next item is the Medfield Energy Committee to discuss the elementary school net zero design, the charter, the community activities. We're actually going to start with the school because Mike Quinlan is here, and we'll deal with the school net zero issue first, and then we'll deal with the rest of the. So, Mike Quinlan, do you want to go up and start this off, and Megan, and Mike and Ty? See, Tom is here as well to deal with this. So, Fred, we'll get to you in a minute, but if we could start with Mike and Tom and Megan, and then move on. All right. Welcome.
Okay, well, thank you all for having me. Before I get started on the school, I'd be remiss if I didn't say that I've had the distinct pleasure of working with our police and fire on a new building for them a few years ago, and found them to be of the highest quality in Medfield. I really enjoyed working with Medfield legends, Chief Meany and Chief Kingsbury. And I had, certainly was nervous when they both decided to retire, but I've seen nothing but great leadership out of Chief Carrico and Chief Garrett, as evidenced tonight. So I had an unfortunate way of meeting up with them when my wife was in a car accident, thankfully not nearly to the level that was discussed tonight, but they were nothing but classy and making sure that she was okay and getting her to the hospital. So I extend my deep gratitude to all in the Medfield Police and Fire Departments. Okay, so thank you for allowing me to speak that. But so I have been invited here. I guess there's some questions still outstanding about net zero. So I'm here really to respond to those questions as they've been brought up. I've brought with me this evening the same presentation that we did back in March, in the hopes of making sure it's absolutely clear on what was discussed back then and what was requested of the Board of Selectmen and what the Board of Selectmen ultimately voted on and what is included in the project. So with that, I'd look to the board if there are questions that you would like to ask of me.
You want to put the presentation up, or?
Sure. Who's Nick or Christine?
I know I don't have it, Mike. So.
And you don't want me to try to put it up.
So, I believe, and Gus, correct me if I'm wrong, you were looking for some clarification on the numbers and the incremental costs that were included in that discussion. Is that accurate?
I can simplify this a little bit.
Simplified would be great.
I've gone through that, and I've also gone through the June 2nd Mark Sandine presentation for a good part of the afternoon, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And Megan and Fred, actually, we spent about an hour and 45 minutes on the phone on Friday. So, while you're the guy on the hot seat in terms of answering this, as I've gone through all this, it's actually distilled down to a simpler set of questions that either we have answers for or we don't. First off, my issue at this point in this process is to figure out how to take burdens off of the taxpayer. So you know where I am on the whole school, but the real point is my position on the school has to do with the tax burden that's actually the debt, and that's what's gotten me going down this path. When I went through, let me start with a question that's simple question. I don't know if it's a simple answer. If we went all the way back and said, what is the total added cost of net zero to that what portion of that $82 million on the school is the total cost attributable to net zero prior to getting the 2% bump from MSBA? So if we go all the way back before net zero was even considered, what is that total amount as it shows up in the $82 million to the school?
So that sounds simple. It's not. It's very complicated, as you expected. But first off, and even before, I should have said it before, but I do want to go back. This discussion was about the school building committee, and our sustainability subcommittee. This is not a Medfield Energy Committee issue. While there are some members that joined it, all decisions that were made as part of that were put in front of you, or proposals that were put in front of you, were put in front of you from the SBC. I take full responsibility for everything that was done there. I just want to make sure that we're clear about that separation between the SBC and the Medfield Energy Committee. Okay, so now if we go back, I don't have the numbers on what the code minimum would be because we never chose to go that route. From the beginning, we saw the benefit of getting 2 additional points of incentive. That has nothing to do with net zero. We chose that path for multiple reasons. One is financial. To have 2 additional percentage points, you can just do simple math and see where that is. And secondly, it's the right thing to do. It's how we should be building buildings in terms of lowering our carbon footprint, in terms of making sure our buildings are sustainable over a 50-year period, which as a town we need to. So we weren't starting at minimum and going to net zero. We started at taking the minimum and going to that 2%, which basically requires us to exceed the energy code by 20%. 20% better performance in terms of energy usage of the building.
Could I try asking my question a different way then?
Sure.
When we got, so the 2% increase is a $1.6 million bump from MSBA.
Give or take, yep.
What did it cost us to get to that?
And that's what I don't have. Again, before we did any pricing, we made that decision to pursue that 2%. It's something that, we've discussed. We discussed amongst the SBC. We discussed our history in terms of building these projects. And it's not 1.6 million, I can tell you that much, to go from the baseline to the baseline 2% plus. In my
It's more
experience.
than that or less than that?
Less than that.
Okay, so the 1.6, so let's at least work with that.
I can't prove that out because we didn't get an estimate that's at the baseline minimum.
Mike, there's so many numbers. And
Well, I got
it's a
plenty
very
of them.
Yeah, I know you do. And it's such a complex decision. And then trying to, again, as somebody who's taken a hard line on the total cost, trying to not just simply arbitrarily do that, but to try to figure out, okay, why is it there, is kind of how you get involved in all this stuff. And so what I'm trying to do is to sort that piece of it out. I went back through Sandine's stuff and realized why there are reasonable things in that presentation for me to have walked away from that with the expectation that basically, I basically had an expectation that until I hear something different, the net zero for us will be something that will be no net added cost to the school because of all those other incentives, and that's where I've been.
And that's what I don't know where that came from.
I can go back to the Sandine.
And that's fine. Again,
So,
that's a Sandine
yeah.
issue, not an SBC
So,
issue.
and at this stage, it doesn't matter.
It does matter. It's important that we're dealing with things that were accurately and openly and honestly presented to you. I want to make sure we're clear on that. Nothing was hidden. I don't take any credit or blame for anything Mark Sandine presented to you. And for you to hold us responsible for that, I think is unfair.
Well, if a selectman from another town comes to the Board of Selectmen at the point that this happened, which was over a year ago, on a topic of how we in Lexington were able to do net zero at what appeared to me to be no net cost to
And
the
that's not
town.
accurate. He responded to questions about that, and he absolutely said there was incremental cost. It was borrowed the same way, let me finish, Gus. It was borrowed the same way we are presenting it. There was no second bond issue for geothermal, as you've stated. There was no $6 million incentive, as you've stated. They got about incentive about what we're going to get. We looked at everything. We deal with Eversource all the time in my business, okay? And I take it very seriously when someone says to me that I have misled you when I have a video that shows exactly what I presented to you, not Mark Sandin's.
So to be clear, I didn't say that Lexington got 6 million. And I can't, and the warrant committee, to their credit, came back to me and said, Gus, where did you get the 6 million from? And I didn't make it up. I got it from somewhere, and I probably got it in a swirl of things. A swirl of conversations, apparently. Let me ask one, I don't want to go too far down this rat hole, Mike. I'm not coming after you. I'm trying to understand
But when you
cost.
say I've misled you, that's coming at me. I do take that personally, Gus.
When I thought I heard something in June of 2020 that caused me to take several decisions. Number one, to be actively supportive of net zero, actively supportive of adding the Energy Committee to help people figure out how to get there, actively supporting of how to get an Eversource representative there. My expectations were all that was going to happen that would get us to a very good net zero spot.
And
now,
we are.
you just said something that, if I'd heard it earlier, would have at least helped in the conversation. You have just said, we have done everything that Lexington has done. That's the first time I've heard that statement, which at least is encouraging. I know it's not 100% accurate because Lexington talked about their battery storage and other things, but let me ask.
First of all, 100% didn't leave my mouth. What I said was that what we're proposing, which is incorporating some added incremental costs and bonding it as part of the school project, that gets offset by the cash flow savings, right? We're paying a certain amount each year on our principal and debt service. I've said this from the beginning. You've brought this up to me before, and you've said it should be no net zero cost, net cost to the town. And I've said there is no option for that. The option is we pay some up front, and the debt service, that annual cash flow, is offset by the savings. So that, in essence, on a year-to-year basis, it is not net cost, but there is incremental upfront cost that we have to invest in order to be able to get those
So
savings.
if you look carefully at Sandin's, what he said, which may not be true, may not be accurate, he basically said because of the incentives that we had, we were able to offset. Yes, we did.
On a
borrow
cash
the
flow
money.
basis.
We did, on a cash flow basis.
Which is what I'm saying.
From the day we opened the school.
Which
So
is
in
what
other
I'm
words,
saying.
it's not a life cycle cost, it's actual true cash flow. The only reason I care, that added debt, where is it?
What do you mean, where is it?
Are the taxpayers covering that debt and then there's cash flow coming in on top of it? Or are we not including that debt in what the taxpayers are being asked to approve?
It's offset in the operations of the building, because the building will be reduced in operational energy costs on a year-to-year basis.
Sandin said basically from the incentives that they had, they were able to cover it. So
Gus, I can't, I'm sorry,
I think that's the- we
I can't
didn't-
respond to what Mark Sandin, how he posited it. I can't tell you that.
My only point is, when you're pushing on me, and I understand why you are, because you've got everybody going after you.
That's
When
not
you
why I
ask
am.
why, when you ask why I might have reacted the way I react, it's because I got information in. It's on the video. I trusted that information. Yes, it's Sandin, it's not you, okay.
I didn't put
but
Mark Sandin in front of you, Gus.
All right.
And so you can't hold me responsible for something that he said. That's not right.
And there's a reason we went through the process of analyzing it for this
Our
particular.
way. I changed a lot about the
particular
Sandin analysis. I
project.
made it more conservative than what he did.
Yes, you did. No, you,
Okay,
I
so
appreciate that.
so I'm not sitting here just saying, oh, well, this is what Mark did, so here you go.
So what I'm trying to do is understand where we are sitting right now.
Mm-hmm.
One of the other things that Sandin said was that basically the PPA which they did with both the storage and the solar. Now, right now, we only have I think we're only looking at PPA for solar right now, and the storage is an open issue.
The storage, we would explore, absolutely. We would explore all options that would save money.
What he
and
said-
if that would result in something, we just don't have the funds to be able to do that because that requires some engineering and design costs.
So when I went back through this, one of the things that I started to wonder about is what he said was the PPA costs that they had in Lexington for for the solar and the storage, they didn't even include in the project that went to MSBA. And I said, I wasn't even, until I took a careful look at the video, I wasn't even smart enough to wonder whether those costs are even in the 82 million or not. So one of the questions I had for you tonight was just, are we doing the same thing that they're doing, which is we're pulling those net zero costs out of the actual project cost that goes to the MSBA? Or are we including them in there, even though we're thinking we might go with
We are not including anything for solar. And that's why, and we specifically did that because a PPA is basically a no upfront cost
Right,
agreement.
right.
We don't pay a dime.
What about storage?
Same thing.
There's nothing in there.
Nothing in there for storage.
Okay, so until.
The only thing we've
Not
done
in your
that
appreciate
is in there is we've provided for conduit so that when the photovoltaics do show up, there are electrical conduit that
Yeah. No,
that
that
they
makes
run their own wires down through into the electric, and then that's small dollars.
Right. So to the extent that my reactions you took personally, that wasn't my intention for you to take
I
them personally.
appreciate that.
I'm sitting here trying to get my arms around some numbers that I think are way too big, and I'm looking for ways to
that
do
clear.
it. Yeah, I know I have. But a piece of it is, at our last meeting, I was saying, well, it's kind of late to change a whole heck of a lot around the total cost of the project, but it's not too late to consider whether there's things that we currently are putting on the taxpayers' back that really shouldn't be there. And that was at the point when I went after the net zero, it was working off a model that said, Sandine basically said, we figured out how to make this work, to include, it wasn't, he didn't make just a pure life cycle cost argument that, oh, don't worry about it, we're going to spend more now here, and we're going to get it down the road. He actually said, we've got it to where, on a cash flow basis, we were able to line up these incentives and offset it. So that's kind of where I was starting.
We will
And-
explore any possible incentive, but I could tell you that they are less than 1/10 of the number that you quoted, the 6 million.
And
There's no town, no project, no school in Massachusetts that has received an incentive that's north of $1 million. Matter of fact, Lexington alone, I couldn't get the exact number because it's confidential, but I did check with Eversource, and they said it's about in the same range as what we're looking at.
Okay, well, that's helpful information, too. So Eversource.
So I just want to make sure we're clear on that. Like, there is no pot of gold that we're missing and we're just ignoring because I want my taxes to go up more, and I want to make it harder for people to accept this project.
So noted.
It's not in my. It's not
Right.
what I'm here for.
I didn't go into that conversation with a plan. I went into that conversation, context of that was we were talking about, should we move ahead with a town meeting this Sunday? And
I understand. I
basically was
watched
saying
it.
no, and then the question came, well, what's your plan? It's like, well, my first reaction is, I don't have a full plan. I'm not sitting there on all the data that you guys are. But in my case, I basically just didn't think we were setting the town up for a success here. So that's what started it. Hey, Mike, I appreciate what you and the building committee are doing. It is complex. I've been trying, and that I'm not happy with the total price, but that's got nothing to do with my confidence and respect for the effort that you're putting in, to the extent that any of my comments 2 weeks ago sounded to you like it was almost a personal attack on the job you're doing. I apologize for that. That's not my intention.
Okay.
I am digging for details. At this point, I'm not. We are now on the roller coaster. We all are in the car. We pay the tickets.
Yep.
We're going up that long, steep slope. So at this point, it's almost not important at this point to try to dig down to ground truth. I did spend a lot of time to make sure I understood what I thought I'd heard on June 2nd, and I'm pretty comfortable. I know what I heard. I understand
I'm
that-
confident you'll do the research that you need to and go back through the presentations you sat through.
Right.
But I think it's really important that you understand the microphone you have in front of you. And the minute that meeting was over, people are posting about how, look at this, there's $6 million that the SBC is not looking for. And so I understand that you, and we've had plenty of good, respectful conversations, and I appreciate the apology, but it's extremely important when there's enough misinformation being thrown around that we don't have our own leaders doing that.
Yeah, so the mistake I made 2 weeks ago is I got drawn into, so what would you do about it? And it happened to be that the two answers I got just before that were, I don't believe Sandine, and maybe we don't have the political clout that Lexington has, which basically, that actually worked the wrong way for me, if you can understand that.
I do.
However, if I had a microphone last week, then maybe I have as big a microphone this week, and I will clearly acknowledge the warrant committee could not reconstruct my $6 million number, and I couldn't completely figure it out. I know I didn't make it up. I basically said, well, I think maybe it was the ground source heat pumps, which is $1.5 million, and then I was trying to figure out where did you get that number
1.5
from?
is the premium. So that's basically going from that baseline that we
That was the
used.
cost of that. I think that was the mid zone of your
It's-
cost, 1.6.
1.6 is the premium to basically, we're looking at, these are complex systems. It's not a buy one, buy the other, swap out parts. There are parts and pieces that are in both, whether it's a VRF system, whether it's a geothermal ground source heat pump system, whether it's a gas boiler. There are parts of that are consistent throughout. You know, we still need to move air. We have rooftop air handling units. So when we presented the options, we presented the total HVAC number for all of the options, not just the cost of the ground source heat pumps. So
But there has been a price, 35,000 per well?
for the wells, the wells are 1.8 million.
Yeah, okay.
I can tell you that number. I looked it up the other day.
Right, okay. So that was without having that number right at my fingertips when I was trying to say, okay, where'd I get from it and so on.
But
maybe it was that, and
It's
then
a
I
good
said, maybe
it's a
it was
good
that
point
matters.
though. So if I say the wells are 1.8 million, but the premium was only 1.6, what does that tell you? Means some other stuff came out.
That's the 200, it wasn't the 200,000 Eversource?
No.
Okay.
Other stuff came out.
We didn't include the Eversource.
We took out gas boilers,
here's-
right?
yeah.
So we took out gas boilers and we put in ground source heat pumps.
So here's, specifically, I don't think we need to get drilling down into all this stuff, but if this,
Nice
if I had
pun,
a
by
big
the way.
microphone last week, I have if I had a big microphone last week, I have a big microphone this week, I hope. The warrant committee looked, they could not substantiate the 6 million. I can't even substantiate that number. I know I heard it somewhere in a context, and I got drawn into throwing a number out to try to make my point
Mm-hmm.
that there was opportunities to get costs off of the taxpayer.
I'm all for it.
And I was basically not totally satisfied we'd done that kind of an effort, and I'm still not, but we're kind of out of time.
So,
So
but
anybody who
I
who
just-
bought
I do
into
want to
that number
address
2
that.
weeks ago, I fully acknowledge that that's a number that the warrant committee, who I have tremendous respect for, you should trust the warrant committee over something like that before you trust me. So,
I appreciate that, and I have equal amount of respect for everything that they're doing. But I do want to, this we're out of time thing. No, we're not out of time. Just because we approve and vote to appropriate money does not mean we need to spend it all. Okay? I think I've proven through multiple capital projects here that I'm not here to spend every dime that you put in charge, that I get put in charge of. We make intelligent decisions about how to spend that money. And if incentives change and there's new money out there, we will pursue it wholeheartedly. If there's something we're unaware of, I'm fairly certain there's not, because we do this every day. If something changes with Eversource and they come up with a new program, or there's other ways, grant programs, that the state or federal government decide to put in place, I will pursue it 100%. So just because we are quote unquote out of time in terms of what we need to appropriate, that does not mean that we are out of time in looking for cost savings.
Yeah.
And that will not stop until the project's over.
Yep. Well, people should take that into account as well.
I hope they will.
So I mean, what I,
If you have more detailed questions, I have the presentation, but I think,
well, no, that piece of it wasn't what, I understood all that stuff. And so that wasn't, where I was really saying is, I have no idea. When the net zero first came up, a bunch of people sent emails because I think there was interest in net zero. And when people do that with me, I'll send emails back to some people and say, okay, but how much do you think we should spend? And the answer comes back, for the most part, not always, but I never thought about that. And so I'm actually fighting a bigger issue here, which is this process that you just kind of, well, what do you want? Add it, and then we tally it. And yeah, maybe some things are taken off, but at the end of the day.
I don't agree that that's the process that we took, Gus. It wasn't add. Matter of fact, we've already been through an extensive value engineering process to cut.
Well, that one, so we look
And
at that.
I would
differently.
gladly walk you through all of that.
We look at it differently, Mike, and I'm not,
Maybe.
this is not you, I mean, I'm not talking about just you, I'm talking about the whole process. We never do say, well, we're gonna design a school to fit this cost, we just kind of.
Because we
It comes
can't.
out to what it comes.
We can't just say, I want to build a school for your number 50 million and say it's got to fit all our kids. The market's not going to say, okay, we'll do that for you. We have to understand what the need is, we define the need, and then we figure out how much it's going to cost us.
Right.
And then there are still ups and downs. We can choose to do more, which some towns do. Some towns add more square footage than we have. Some towns add, different finishes and other things that may drive up costs. And we can say, hey, we want to make sure this is down as close to the bare minimum. And I believe we've done that.
Well, I don't have any further questions.
Pete, anything?
My understanding all along was that the incentives from Eversource were fairly minimal, and that the Mark Sandine analysis was based on looking at the cash flows.
Correct.
And so that, and that net zero was cash positive from year one. And that
Correct.
was the basis on which that I made my decision to go to net zero.
Just a note on incentives. We advise our clients, we don't budget for incentives. They're not significant, they don't affect the overall budget, and they're not guaranteed. So we put a budget together. When we budget our schools, we don't say, hey, this money's going to come back to you, and then it doesn't, and then where are we going to be? So the incentives are a relatively small number. We're looking at just about $220,000 in incentives on an $82 million project.
One of the other favorite things that I've learned from sitting through a lot of energy committee meetings is that when things are designed to passive house standards, which is this very tight
Envelope.
building, that the people that live there like them much better because the air turnover is much less, the temperature is more stable, there much less noise, and the people that build apartment buildings said that they had much less turnover of their tenants as a result, and so that it worked better for them as a result because the people that lived in it liked it better. I mean, among other things, we're going to get a better school for our kids to be in all day long.
I agree.
All right, so Gus, you're done?
I'm done.
You're done, Mike? You good?
Unless you've got more for me.
I've got nothing for you, Mike.
All right.
You probably have like 4 more meetings tonight, so.
Yes.
I'll let you get to the rest of them. So, all right, thank you, Mike, appreciate
I'll
it.
stick around in case, because I know there was some other discussion.
Sure. All right, so now we have on to other Energy Committee issues.
So first off, he just ran interference for you on the biggest one, which was net zero. That one's been answered. So the only other issue I had was simply with recognize, and this was an informational question, and you've already two of you knew it was coming anyway now. You added 3 people to the Energy Committee. And my only, given, Fred, if you recall, a year ago when you added a couple of members to the Energy Committee, I questioned it certainly, and because of the size of the committee, and you brought up the fact that your committee's actually has several initiatives, and it made sense to structure the committee in a way that subcommittees, if you will, could go off in multiple directions. So the only question I had when you added 3 more was, how does that change, or does it change what those directions are, what you're doing. I was just looking for an update on how you've organized the committee.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for that question, Gus. Members of the Energy Committee are here tonight, and I don't know if it's possible to, promote them. Particularly, and by the way, Megan and Hilly are right here in person. Jim Redden, Jim Nail, Penny, I think are online, and maybe Bob Winograd, and maybe Cynthia. And I'm promoting them for a particular reason to address this question. I welcome the opportunity to address the question of what's going on with the size and scope of the Energy Committee. We're not here to have an Energy Committee meeting and go through all the detail of all the items, but I do want you to appreciate just how much work is going on. And yes, you're right, Gus, we have organized in the past year and a half or two, we call them work groups. I like that term, by the way, but they operate essentially as subcommittees. But I like the idea of work groups because they do a lot of work. They get a lot of work done. And then they bring to the general committee meeting the results. And so if we could, and also could you bring up my slide number 12? Is that possible, Nick, please?
With the work groups?
I'm sorry?
The one with the work groups?
Yeah, that might be 13. That would be fine too.
This one.
Right. Okay. So there. And actually, if you go back one, yeah. Okay. Why don't you go ahead to the next one and the next one, then we'll come back to this. So that's the full list of the roster, as we understand it at this moment. That's as of your most recent meeting where you approved, or meetings where you approved Cynthia and David at the top, or that are at the top now. And there was some confusion as to number of years of term. So we were surprised when this got published in your, I was surprised. And I'm sorry that I don't track it that closely. I thought David Stevenson, we were not asking him to return, but looks like he was on until 2023. So he's probably going to come back with a letter of resignation. So it's 14 or 15 at this moment. So now if you can go back to the one before. So this is the one I want to focus on. And what I've asked each of the work group coordinators to do is to come up with a 1-minute statement, if they could, one after the other, and just to give you an idea of the scope of work that we're tackling every month. A couple of them are in parentheses. Those are sort of in hiatus, those work groups, because other things, because they're not needed right this minute. But
how can the elementary school work group coordinator be in parentheses?
Because just as Mike was explaining to you, the school building committee has taken full charge with their sustainability committee. We did go back and approve. We appreciated their work and fully support it. But we, as the energy committee, weren't promoting that. They had, I don't know, how many meetings did your sustainability committee have? And Tom is here too from that. A lot. And no meeting was shorter than 45 minutes, as I remember. Hours and hours, many.
So there is somebody from the Energy Committee on the Sustainability
So,
Committee?
Megan, do you want to go first?
Just trying to get the parentheses to go away, Megan.
Sure. So that work group has had me and Alex Stevens from the Energy Committee, and Alec is much more technical than me. And
Okay.
so, yep. And then on the Sustainability Subcommittee was Tom Erb, Walt Kincaid, myself, Amy Colleran, Alex Stevens, and then a parent, Jason Uzzle, who joined us.
Okay,
So that was that.
got it. Okay.
Any other questions about that? Thank you. Megan, that was short and sweet. That's great. And if Penny's available, I might as well go in this order.
Good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure to spend a few minutes with you at Board of Selectmen. I did want to reassure all of you, and particularly Selectman Murray, that you can be assured that whatever incentive you get from Eversource will be the maximum incentives. I'm the EVP at Eversource with customer experience and energy strategy, and I've been on the Energy Committee for a decade, and I'm very proud to serve on it, and I'm very proud to make sure that Eversource is providing great support to Madefield. Three
So Christine,
updates
let
from
the
solar
record so
energy.
state. Thank you, Penny.
3 updates from the Eversource, or from the Medfield Solar Committee. We've been working very closely with Kingsbury Club to finish that work out. We got some articles through, as you know. Going forward, the DPW, we have, working with Solar Design Associates to create an RFP that will allow us to go out for PPA or hybrid. And we have a big project to identify the solar potential for all the town buildings, and that is my update.
Okay. Thanks, Penny.
You want to go next? You can stand here.
So thank you for having me again. I was just here about 2 months ago and reported on our progress at the Town of Medfield Climate Action Plan. We're about just halfway into it, starting a town meeting in May. And I'm leading a work group of about 10 people. Some of them are from the Medfield Energy Committee. Pete is there, and then some community members that are interested in this work. We also do a lot of work with the town administration, trying to draw in the different departments and give them an opportunity to contribute and be involved, and also with community groups and residents. We are following the MAPC playbook in developing the plan, and as part of that, we have developed a greenhouse gas emissions inventory for Medfield, which shows that the majority of the emissions that originate in Medfield actually come from private residences and cars. So that is going to be our main focus in sort of a priority listing of our activities. A lot of our time is really engaged with engaging people with it, with the action planning. We have had a webinar. We have had presence with two booths at Medfield Day, and had a lot of interaction with the public. And we currently have out a questionnaire for people to fill out, and I invite them to look at that at the Medfield Energy Committee Document Center and submit a questionnaire result to us. And we're planning another webinar later in the year, and then publish a draft for public comments before, our deadline, which is in March.
Thanks, Hilly.
Thanks, Hilly. Jim, are you there? Jim Nail?
Hilly, by the way, the court changed my hearing date tomorrow to conflict with your meeting, so I can't attend tomorrow.
Yeah, actually, the meetings are Tuesdays.
So you already missed it, Pete.
Oh,
The court hearing wasn't today, was it?
Okay, yes, Brett, I'm here.
Great. Jim, you got a 1-minute statement maybe on the Medfield State Hospital Work Group, the Energy Committee's work group on the state hospital?
Sure do. We have been following all of the developments of the committee, reviewing the RFP. We submitted a 6-page evaluation of the Pulte proposals at that process, and appreciate the development consideration of energy perspectives of that development. Going forward, as that PDA is signed and go into the due diligence period, we'll be working and with Trinity and their various architect and sustainability consultants to hear where their thinking is going, provide any perspective we can, and obviously continue to encourage them to pursue the highest energy performance they can within the context of historical preservation and gaining access to the tax credits they need to make the project viable.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks, Jim. Is Paul on the call? I don't even know.
I didn't see him, no.
Okay, we'll go to Jim Redden if he's there.
Okay, hello, can you hear me?
Yes?
Okay, good. First, I want to say thank you to the board for adding me to the committee. It's my second time. I was in the early days of the early committee, helped with a the school budget cuts in the early days. I've been invited back to try to, with the vehicles, transportation vehicles. So the work group on transportation vehicles has pretty much four responsibilities I've put into. We are supposed to help with town-owned controlled vehicles in this form through the Green Community Act and for Period 4. We're supposed to help the town purchase energy-efficient vehicles. We've been reaching out to different departments, starting to present different ideas. We're trying to be more active than we have been in the past, and the vehicle options are becoming, I think, much better for hybrids and electric vehicles, and we believe there's going to be a lot of interest in how we can move the town towards them. The second part of our responsibilities is to reach out to the citizens and residents on their own vehicles. They make up about 41% of the emissions in town, the cars they drive around. So we're doing outreach programs, as Haley said, also we just finished Medfield Day. We're also contacting towns and finding out what we're doing to help more of their citizens purchase electric vehicles. So that's another part of our work. The next piece is we're working on town infrastructure. As just decarbonizing the town happens, we're going to need to put in charging stations around town. So we're working with the town. Town is probably not as already, we're working with Eversource on for our charging station next to town hall. There's been some private ones put in around town. So our committee is helping working through different locations in town where charging will be available, supporting all the infrastructure improvements that will be coming along. I also think it could be very good if some of the legislation in Congress passes. There could be an awful lot of money available for this infrastructure upgrades, so we're going to be following that very closely. The fourth and final piece, real quick, is that we actually expect to get into carpools, featuring and community transportation as part of our vehicle transportation work. We've really just started doing that now. We're in the planning stage of how we might add those kinds of services for around town. So that's something we're looking to do under the transportation vehicles.
Thanks, Jim.
I don't see Bob or Tricia.
Bob and Trish aren't here. Okay.
A quick question for Jim. Just thinking into the plan that Sarah came forward with the recovery, COVID recovery plan. One of the issues in there had to do with looking at public transportation here, and I was glad to hear we weren't talking about bringing bus service in, but I'm just curious whether Jim, are you looking at any of those kinds of issues around? At some point, I can picture Medfield putting in some form of convenient public circulating transportation. Are you looking at that kind of stuff?
Yeah, that would be something we would look at also, and in particular, it might be with Medfield State Hospital. Some of the proposals up there, with different types of development, might be like a starting point, and then maybe have a town loop or something like that.
Right. Right.
And assuming we did something like that, I assume we'll also try to make it electric. I've done some studies on electric buses for campuses and stuff, and it can be a very cost-effective way to go. Long term, I haven't really started that much work on it yet, but I think one of the most important things on electric vehicles is electric school buses. So if there's a way to start thinking about that and getting some funding for something along those lines, I feel like that's where the pollution is in my mind. Everybody just sat behind a bus and go, how can the school bus be the most polluting bus, vehicle on the road? So maybe we can do something along those lines also.
Great.
Good.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you, and thanks for that input, Gus. So just to round out the list here, so the budget, that's a new activity for us, trying to work up what might be good to propose for long-term, for capital budgets, and Nick is is guiding us, and we're grateful for that, because it's a brand new brand new direction for us. So we're trying to do the right thing here to advise the town how decarbonization maybe should be implemented over time. The really good news there is that we've already got 2 projects in queue, one right now within budget and one that is pending the next Green Communities application, if we should get it. So 2 heat pump projects already. Both are heat pump water heaters, but that's very exciting. And I'll jump from there to the mention about the sustainability coordinator, Susan McPhee, whose agreement you're finally voting on tonight, which is great. And she's already been tremendously helpful. And Nick is is guiding us in many directions, and one of them is, we're working with her on a limited budget, so we don't want to exhaust her budget in the first month. So he's keeping us on track, is making sure we don't overwhelm her usefulness. She's exceedingly useful. Okay, and so that's budget, warrant articles. Okay, so Bob Winograd there is up there for warrant articles. We don't have any that we're working on right now, but probably as of our next meeting this next week, we will probably start to look at least 2 more, but there are many stages to go through before there's anything to talk about. And in parentheses, the CCA coordinator, that also you're voting on tonight. We're very appreciative of that. That came from a lot of work from the Energy Committee that then led to a separate committee that wasn't the Energy Committee that Nick and Megan and Bob were on, and that resulted in what you're going to be voting on tonight. And Tricia does a great job keeping us coordinated with the other outside groups, or at least informed as to, so every town is going through what we're talking about, more and less. Some are further ahead, some are further behind, and there's various efforts, MAPC, MCAN, and Mass Energize, Mass Energize. Anyway, various efforts that work with many towns, and it's really helpful to coordinate or to hear about what other towns are doing. Last but not least, so right now we don't have somebody else coordinating this. It's been first and foremost. This is our work over the first 10 years. That's all we did, pretty much, was coordinate about municipal energy consumption. So that's not the subject per se of tonight, but I'd be glad to come back and report on that. We work closely with, now with Susan, but with Amy, and now with Nick, because now as the decarbonization comes in, we're talking about vehicles and buildings. So it's coming together nicely. Speaking of coming together nicely, I really appreciate all the Energy Committee members who came, are attending tonight online, and those that spoke to you tonight. I really appreciate that. That's the report, I think. Are there any more slides going forward from there? Not backward? Oh, yeah, no. So I'm hoping you don't really need to talk about the charge, which, otherwise known as the charter. I really hope we don't need to talk about that tonight, and I would recommend, if you really want to talk about it, if Cynthia's on the line, could you check to see if she said she was doubtful, but anyway, she's one of the authors of the original 2008 charge. So if you really want to talk about that, let us know what the questions are. We can come back and report at some other time.
Yeah, I don't.
Great.
I'm not sure about.
That's great. Thank you.
I had 2 thoughts, Fred.
Maybe go back to the coordinators slide.
Yeah, go where you go. I don't need the slides.
Yeah.
2 thoughts, Fred. 2 years ago, I guess, when we did the Green Community's annual report that I wouldn't sign until I'd read the report, and you've heard this from me before, is that I basically said I wouldn't sign the cover sheet until I'd read the report, which was really a smart thing for me to have done, because I had no real appreciation of the impact the Energy Committee had been having. And I'm guessing most people in town actually don't. I'm going to predict that as the town moves closer in this direction of climate goals, there's going to be a greater and greater crunch where your committee is going to be looking to do things in town that by themselves are only cost-adding things. And you know me enough to know where my predisposition will be on cost-adding things. But I actually think there's a story that you have around what I'm looking for is cost effectiveness. And I actually think there's a story that you have on the impact that you're having on the town. Perhaps some of the things, and I think, Nick, you're trying to get your arms around the electricity consumption. I think you are anyway, around, we don't have any, we basically say, let's take net zero. This is all gonna be great. It's gonna be life cycle, It's not that I don't believe in life cycle, it's that I don't find that we have any mechanisms for holding any accountability around those promised benefits. And so,
I'm sorry, I think Mike left.
and well, this
Said he was
doesn't,
gonna stick
this
around,
doesn't
but-
have to do. No. He let you off the hook on the school project. I'm talking the big picture stuff that you guys are tackling. What I'm getting at is that there are things that the committee has done and that I think you're continuing to do that actually do have a bottom line impact on the town. And I think the more you can articulate, quantify, and represent that to where it's not this issue of let's just do this thing that's costing money because we know it's good, but actually you do a better job of linking into what some of the big impacts have been on the town, I think that will help you. I know it'll help you with me.
With you, okay.
I
appreciate
you're
you bringing
guy that's the bluntest speaker, that's all. It's just, if we're going to do this stuff, it has to make economic sense. But I think there's a lot of stuff you've done that does make economic sense if we can get our arms around it.
Well, Gus, I appreciate you asking the question, and I appreciate that you're saying, you're the one saying it and other people are thinking it. That,
I think that's
no, I
true,
appreciate
yeah,
that. That's
yeah.
great. So I will just say, in the briefest possible way, I have been a member since the very beginning. Cynthia has also, and Jim Redden, whose name is right in front of us. Jim Redden was there at the beginning, and then he had a hiatus, and he's come back, which is terrific. I'm pretty sure that we have never proposed to the town of Medfield or the Board of Selectmen, any other body, that we expend money where we weren't making more money. We have always, in every time we've come with any request, it is, perhaps your word was cost effective. Other people might call it profitable. So the notion of cost adding is a notion. It's not a wrong notion that it can be done. And it's not a wrong notion that it might yet someday be done. But there are insinuations that are dangerous to imply that we, the Energy Committee of Medfield, ever, to date, in 12 years, have ever done that. We never have. We have always come to you with nothing but cost effectiveness.
So
Nothing but. And by the way, do you have a final say?
right. So I applaud you for it. I encourage you to keep doing it. And the one point I'll say is, and until 2 years ago, when I read that annual report, I didn't appreciate that point. And so this was by no means a veiled criticism. I'm saying, I found out 2 years ago. And it's like I look at some of the discussions and it's like, there's a stronger argument. There's a stronger, not argument, there's a stronger case. I didn't know that until 2 years ago, and I took the time to read the annual report. So my point was intended as a helpful comment.
I hope other people hear it that way. That's all I'm saying about the insinuation part.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. The insinuation can be taken the other way. So if you want to be clear, that would really, really help.
Was I? I think I just was.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anything else?
Hilly does have one final remark, and there's huge headlines every day these days. And I don't know if that's what you were going to say, but you brought that up at another meeting today.
Yeah, well, I'm unprepared for this, so first of all, I want to say I appreciate you talking about data, and we struggle with this every day. We're actually working with the town, and we would like better data to document our progress and the town's progress. So this is not a town issue, this is sometimes a state issue of how data is recorded, but that is definitely an important issue we want to go forward. In terms of being cost effective, I think if you look at the bigger picture, not only Medfield but outside of Medfield, it's a consensus that people say if we don't take any action to plan for our future that includes climate action, it's going to be very expensive economically, socially, personally, environmentally, whatever. So you have a group of volunteers here in the Energy Committee that have a vision that we can have a better future if we plan for it. And we're working very hard to do that. I'm, as coordinating the climate action plan, sort of take a bigger view, a long-term view to, you know, a lot of people in the energy committee are very data-driven, look at details, you know, how many valves and whatever you need to change. Right now we're in the middle of COP26 in Glasgow, and there's world leaders coming together telling us that we're fighting for our survival right now. There's a lot of fear out there from a lot of people how a dark future could look like if we don't take action. And I think what the Energy Committee is trying to do locally is to provide means to take meaningful action in town. Now, I know that the Energy Committee sometimes comes off as a little pushy because we don't have a champion, designated champion in the administration to sort of promote our issues. And we're also asking, not we, but you know, the whole climate action planning really requires that we take new approaches to how we think about problems, how we you know, we can't go about business as usual anymore. We really have to take innovative approaches and think outside the box. And that is very difficult. I know that the administration is already busy just doing what they need to do. And creating that friction sort of is sometimes uncomfortable, but we do need to think about that. And if we had a sustainability coordinator with more hours, I think that would definitely help. But I'm also saying we are all leaders, and we have to ask ourselves, what kind of leaders do we want to be? What is the future we envision? Is it, you know, a future that is dark and that a lot of people fear, and especially the children and the young people that have to live it? Or do we want to dedicate ourselves to planning for a future that would be more livable? And that's sort of my statement. You know, we are really the leaders that provide that. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Hilly. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Will. Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Tom, Hilly, Fred. All right, thank you all. All right, next item, to review and vote to approve the Town of Medfield financial policy, or the amended Town of Medfield financial policy. Did you have a chance to review it?
I'm all set.
You're all set? Gus, anything
The only
further?
question was, what changed, if anything? Time to get another, like, we looked at we had the policy like 2 weeks ago, and I went through it yet again, no changes.
No changes.
I don't think it changed.
He just wanted a chance to take a look at it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, so it's the same thing we saw the last time.
good. I'm glad I didn't read it thinking there was another set of unmarked changes. It's like, that's good.
So do we
Excellent.
have a motion?
I move that we approve the Town of Medfield financial policy.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Christina, Nick, do you know the timing for the warrant committee voting on it?
I don't.
Have they voted on it?
They have not voted on it yet.
Okay.
It depends on what their meeting schedule is like.
Okay.
They're all in favor of it, but they're not going to call a meeting just to vote on it.
Understood. So you might have to wait until January.
You may have to wait
That's
till
fine.
January, but they are all on board, and they have submitted their comments, and they've been incorporated as
So
well
this is the operative financial policy for,
for this budget season
Going forward.
that we
Very
are, need to start immediately.
all right, next agenda item, to discuss and vote on a recommendation for the warrant article for the new elementary school project at the November 7th, 2021 special town meeting. So I think we have discussed this sufficiently. Does anyone want to discuss this further? Gus, do you want to discuss it further?
Yeah, like I said, we're on the roller coaster. We're going up the steep part before the
Okay.
first drop-off.
Okay, and I assume you don't have a motion?
I do not have a motion.
Pete, would you make a motion? That we move, that we recommend, that we recommend in favor of the article?
So moved.
Second, all in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
There you go. All right, so we will recommend in favor of the warrant article. And given that I'm on the school building committee, and otherwise, in the interest of time, I told Scott that we didn't need a separate speaking spot at town meeting. So unless you want a separate spot to speak,
Oh, no, okay, that's fine, no.
just in the interest of.
And we'll have our printed warrant report there, and it will reflect the 2-to-1 vote in that.
All right.
And if I could make, once again, one public service announcement, my absence at the Sunday town meeting is not a political statement on my part. I had a trip that was planned since the beginning of the year, the Army Air Force game. I'll be flying back from Dallas on Sunday, so there is no political point to my absence.
Go Army.
Or-
Good luck.
Yes.
All right, next up, vote to release the request for proposals for the Housing Options Incentive Program. No one offered a naming suggestion, so I just said, Christine, let's turn to the Housing Options Incentive Program, which sounded better than the IRP.
Sarah did mention that she was going to go back to the Affordable Housing Trust again on Thursday, so I don't know if you'll be seeing it again to them, but I don't know if you want to.
Just for a different name.
There may be a change, to the name, but maybe.
Well, I think we want to release it, right?
Yeah.
We'd like
But
to-
I think you could release it pending the name change. We're just looking for a better acronym.
Pending a better name change.
Pending a better name change, everything in the RFP will stay the same.
So I had, Pete has questions?
Do you have comments, Pete, on this?
No, I think it's a good idea.
Yes.
I would only point out that it still talks about the pilot round in the first paragraph, so if that was intentional, that's fine. But that was, I think we had said before, that was a relic from what the source
You can
was.
take it
so I don't care. Take it out if you, I don't know why it's there.
Take it out.
But if you want to keep it, that's okay. And then the only other question I had, in this whole thing, there's no actual, because of the development committee, I'm tuned into having RFPs where we have outlets where we don't actually have to award a contract. There's no obligation to award anything here, right?
No.
So
Right?
that's the only question I had.
We can say no.
Yeah.
I'm going to predict this may result in 0 proposals, but we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. All right.
So I'm working on your acronym for you, Housing Options Motivation Energy Home.
Housing
You
options,
just have to make it
motivation.
make more sense.
Housing options, motivation, energy. I don't know, Pete. You might want to stick to law. I don't know. May not be copyrighted. Not that I did any better. I mean,
You're killing my new marketing business.
well, you have until Thursday to adjust it if the Affordable Housing Trust can change the name. So do we have a motion to approve, subject to a potential better name?
So I move that we vote to approve, whoops, wrong one. I move that we vote to release the request for proposals for the Housing Options Incentive Program, subject to a modification to the name Housing Options Incentive Program.
I second that.
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye. All right, next item, to vote to approve a services agreement with Good Energy LP for energy broker services for community choice aggregation. Any questions, comments on this one, Pete?
No, great that we're getting it done.
Gus?
You guys are here, I can't let you off without questions. How did you wind up selecting Good Energy? What was the process, or what was the basis?
Didn't we do this last time? We did this last time.
Did we do that last
We
time?
did this last
Yeah,
time.
it was Nick, Nick, Bob, and Megan.
See, if you send me the same thing a second time, I have the same
Well-
questions. It's good to know I think the same
This
way.
is just the contract. So last time we awarded.
I think
this is
you
the
accepted the recommendation
You
and
accepted the
subject to the
recommendation.
contract.
Okay, so this is, so then my next question is, there were 2 copies of the, I assume both copies of the contract that were in our meeting packet were the exact same document?
They put in there twice. I did, then.
I guess the answer to that is yes. And there was one minor thing I wanted to confirm, probably with you, Megan. The expectation is still valid that we expect that the people who are the basic service people that are defaulted into a community aggregation contract that get to default to be part of it, they will be better off than they were with the basic service rate. I understand we're not there yet, but that still is the intention, is that option that they would default to is one that leaves them better off than if they were basic service.
I'll say that's what we're going to be developing in the next phase, what those options are, and that our intent certainly would not be to make our program more expensive than what they could get.
Okay. And the only reason after our last conversation about this other net zero stuff, I just want to be clear. The issue I had originally around default, and if anybody's studied any default decision-making, people tend to default to the default. So if you're going to do that, as long as I was basically saying it had to be opt-in rather than opt-out, but then when you explained, well, this is opt-out, but if they do nothing, they'll default to a better deal than the basics. It's only the basic service people. Then it was like, okay, they're dropping to a better spot. So I'm still looking for that when we get there.
I will say that, I mean, that's our objective.
Okay.
And we
Okay.
really won't know how that, we won't know how that works till like we get to bid day, maybe
Yep.
what your options are.
Yeah.
And then you hop into your contracts, and then, you don't know what Eversource's rates are going to do.
Mhm.
Right, so it's a point in time decision that we make the best decision, the decision we think is best for the residents.
Okay. Still have the same expectations, but okay, I know what you're saying, and yeah, I know what you're saying, and I know that even in the samples where the aggregation is a better deal, it's not always, because it's a longer-term commitment, it's not a better deal every single month of the year, so I get that. I just have a hard time picturing that we would default people to a worse deal waiting for the good months to come. I would think that we would be looking to have them default to a better deal, and maybe somewhere down the road, you know, if they went to basic service, they'd be better off, but chances are they won't because they default. So, okay. All right. Ready for?
I'm ready for a motion, Gus.
Okay. I move that we approve a services agreement with Good Energy LP for energy broker services for the community choice aggregation.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye, opposed? All right. Next, vote to approve a contract with Spark Energy Conservation for sustainability coordinators. Two good names right there, Good Energy and Spark Energy Conservation. Those are good names. We should ask them about the name of our housing program. Yeah. Who can be against good energy? I mean, you're against, I mean, really.
Yep.
Any questions on this, Pete?
No, no.
Yes, I do.
Spark questions,
You're going to
all
like
right.
this question. So the contract itself has a not to exceed of 20K, but the attachment A that came in from Susan McPhee was 25K. Is that in fact deliberate?
Sure. She says typically her services cost the municipality about $25,000.
Yep.
We have budgeted $20,000.
Okay,
for it for this
so it is
fiscal year.
deliberate. I just wanted to make sure you weren't getting gypped by 5K on this one. Okay. So it's 20K because that's what the budget is able to support.
Correct. And we did apply, Green Communities has a $10,000 application in it for additional community sustainability coordinator services. So if that is
Okay.
successful. this
Okay,
addition
and then as I recall, there was options for 2 extensions or something like that? Yeah, okay, got it. Ready?
Yep.
Okay, I move that we approve a contract with Spark Energy Conservation for sustainability coordinator services.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye, opposed? All right, next. Vote to approve a contract with Environmental Partners for PFAS, treatment feasibility study and conceptual design at wells 1, 2, and 6, and vote to approve the use of American Rescue Plan Act funds for the study eligible as a water infrastructure project.
Correct. You had asked Mo, when he was in a few meetings ago, could be 3 or 4 at this point, to have environmental partners start to put together a feasibility study for us with the use of ARPA money. So we are moving forward on that, and the cost is $61,000.
Okay, any questions, Pete?
No.
I
Gus?
have one question. Why is well 6 one of the wells?
We talked about it that night. We were including all of them.
Just even though the numbers have come back so low, just to be ready in case that situation were to change.
Okay, so then my more basic question is, why are we doing it? And- Thanks, Fred. Why are we doing it? It's precautionary just to see what we'd be dealing with?
Wells 1 and 2, our numbers are closer
Marginal,
to the maximum
right.
contaminant level, so
Right.
that is more,
Right.
we know what we need to do at wells 3 and 4. For wells 1 and 2, we would need to explore what we could do if we needed to.
Just FYI, EPA came out with a guidance within the last 10 days or so. I think it's available on the MMA website. If not, I can get it for you if you're interested in seeing it. But it's their entire approach, what it's going to be to this going forward. It's a very aggressive, proactive response. It's not limited to public water supplies. Very ambitious.
Okay.
Okay.
Motion?
I move that we approve a contract with Environmental Partners for PFAS treatment feasibility study and conceptual design at wells 1, 2, and 6, and vote to approve the use of American Rescue Plan Act funds for the study.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, next, vote to approve the renewal of MedX rates for calendar year 2022 and authorize Town Administrator Christine Truweiler to sign the rate acceptance. Numbers didn't look too bad.
No, went up $2.25 a month.
It's not bad. It's not bad at all. Any questions on this, Pete?
No.
Gus?
None.
Motion.
Move that we vote to, that we approve the renewal of the MedX rates for calendar year 2022 and authorize Town Administrator Christine Fearweiler to sign the rate acceptance.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? All right. Vote to accept a community planning grant in the amount of $75,000 from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and authorize Town Administrator Christine Truweiler to sign the standard state contract documents. The community planning grant is for a zoning diagnostic, revision of the open space residential zoning bylaw, and evaluation and preparation of mixed-use zoning regulations for the Route 109 corridor. Questions, comments? Pete?
That was a very eloquent reading. Could you do that again in Pig Latin?
No.
No more questions, sir.
That would make my one favorite comment about contractual documents like this. The authorized signatory listing that was in the agenda packet was not filled out. So it's going to be you.
It's going to be me. We were reluctant to fill anything out because this is the most intense contract signing, and we needs a lot of notary signatures, so we've held off
Right.
doing anything until we
No,
have
that-
Marion in the room.
It did, okay, but it's.
It will
you.
be me.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Motion.
I move that we accept the community planning grant in the amount of $75,000 from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and authorize Town Administrator Christine Truweiler to sign the standard state contract documents.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Next, vote to accept a state fiscal year 2022 budget earmark in the amount of $36,000 to purchase voting machines and authorize Town Administrator Christine Truweiler to sign the standard state contract documents.
Just a thank you to our local delegation for including that in the budget for us.
Much needed.
Very much needed.
Are we getting changed in our Senate district?
At the moment, it looks like we are.
Yeah.
Are we going with Becca Roush?
Questions and comments on the budget earmark, Pete?
No.
Gus?
My only comment is this stupid standard state form is the absolute
It's the
most
worst.
hateful, miserable, lousy form that I think I've ever seen in my life.
We hate it.
You should see, this is nowhere near the worst the Commonwealth of Massachusetts can do. So, motion?
I move that we accept the state fiscal year 2022 budget earmark in the amount of $36,000 to purchase voting machines and authorize Town Administrator Christine Truweiler to sign the standard state contract documents.
Second.
All in favor?
Yep.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, next. Vote to approve and sign the Chapter 90 final report in the amount of $318,522.81 for milling and rubber chip seal of various roads. Pete, questions, comments, concerns?
No.
Gus?
Only comment is those various roads are really close to where I live. They did a nice job.
All right, motion.
I move that we approve and sign the Chapter 90 final report in the amount of $318,522.81 for milling and rubber chip seal of various roads.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. All right. Consent agenda. Authorize the use of the gazebo for the holiday stroll on December 3rd, 2021. Sure to be controversial. Motion, Gus.
I move that we approve the one item on the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, no meting minutes. Do we have
The
any?
first person on the consent agenda has come to one of these meetings just to make sure it makes it through. It's kind of.
She doesn't trust me.
Well, I think Jean saw all these contracts and all these numbers, and she wondered there might be some money she has an idea to spend it on. So it might just be a chance to come in and get some money for something. Christine, Town Administrator updates.
We are prepping for the special town meeting on Sunday, and we hope to see everybody there, and we would ask everybody for their patience as we go through our day.
All right. No meeting minutes. Next meeting dates. Are we going to post a meeting for us for before the special town meeting or no? Just have the special town meeting. I don't think we have anything to do.
I don't think you have anything to do that evening. It's just the two of you, so I have not yet.
All right. Selectmen reports. Pete.
The Medfield Foundation Legacy Funds Grant Committee held a pitch-it event when people came and asked for the grant money on Sunday night. It was really very exciting to hear from all of the different groups in town that were looking for money. I just wish we had 3 times as much money.
Don't we all?
We all got the email from the woman that got bitten by a dog up at Medfield State Hospital, and I think the dogs are an issue there that we need to look into. That's it.
Gus.
And the email on the dog issue was the only thing that I had. I agree. I called, because I happened to see the email come in on Saturday morning, about 20 minutes after it came in. I actually made a call and talked directly to the person. It's a tough thing to figure out how to put in proper restrictions that are policeable, and that do whatever we can to properly balance people who have dogs that they want to exercise and people who just want to get up there and exercise. So I do think it's worth some careful thought, and I think we'll have it on an agenda item at some point in the near future. That's it.
Nothing additional for me. I hope to see everybody at the special town meeting on Sunday. I did want to note thanks to Christine and Marion and everybody else who are working extraordinarily hard to prepare what is an extraordinarily complicated special town meeting for Sunday. And so thanks to everyone and to the moderator who's putting out information about how this is going to work. This is going to be a new experience for everyone. And I think to Christine's point, if we could all be as patient as possible with parking and each other and all the rest of it, we'll all get through the day. And it would be, everyone should pay close attention to the instructions on how things are going to happen. So with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Second? Oh, second. Second. All in favor? Aye.
Yes.
Opposed? All right. My Zoom kicked out, but I'm assuming there are no questions or comments in the Q&A to deal with.
No, nothing.
All right. When do you head down to the game?